Did you know that the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions for human activities in the world is burning fossil fuels for electricity, heat, and transportation? Not only that, but only for these activities, transportation is the second main emitting source of it. As a society, we should prioritize this topic and stop making fossil fueled vehicles and start focusing on the making of EV solutions. According to the US Energy Information Administration's official webpage, in 2021 about 134.83 billion gallons of finished motor gasoline were consumed in the US alone. Today I'm going to talk about how the problem of society keeping using combustible cars, their effects on environment, and the production of electric cars as a possible solution for this matter. Do you know um, that the most used energy source in the world has been motor oils since the early 1890s? That means society has been mainly using the same energy source for motor cars for almost 125 years now, and this needs to stop. When a gallon of gas is burned in a car, the carbon in it pulls oxygen from the air and creates CO2, which is the main greenhouse gas that provokes climate change. According to a cultura.org webpage, the transportation sector is the biggest source of carbon emissions of 30% of the total US carbon footprint and 37% of the emissions for energy consumption alone. The issue here is that contaminating the ozone with CO2 provokes global warming, resulting in severe weather changes and environmental emergencies that are a reality nowadays. Not only that, but vehicle emissions from burning fossil fuels also contain toxic pollutants besides CO2, such as smog, nitrogen oxide, sulfate oxide, and exposure to these can be really very harmful to your health. In 2015 alone, 22,000 Americans died from transportation emissions, mainly diesel and um, gasoline vehicle emissions. Also, according to the Center of Climate Energy Solutions, CO2 emissions have risen dramatically since the start of the industrial revolution, going up to a current approximate of 34,000 million tons of CO2. And sadly, not only humans are affected by this. According to National Geographic, a lot of everything that lives is affected by it. All types of life on Earth, and everything could be in danger if this CO2 keeps rising. All the consequences of the CO2 problem are awful. Um, but keeping with the little changes could save the ozone and our environment as well. To lower the levels of CO2 emitted to the ozone, we should focus on the production of electric cars to substitute fossil fuel combustible cars and transport in the transportation sector. This could mean stopping the production of combustible cars and switching this power to producing EV substitutes. According to the US Engineer Information Administration, it has been proven that all electric cars emit 66 less percent of CO2 emissions uh, uh, in comparison to combustible cars. On a greater scale, switching from combustible cars to all electric cars could mean reducing the CO2 emissions by half, at least, in the future. But these could only be implemented if both parties, producers and consumers, join forces to make the change happen for this. Manufacturers should keep looking for ways to creating these all electric cars for affordable prices and as alternatives for the current vehicle market. And we as consumers should keep educating ourselves about the environmental effects of transportation. We also should be willing on spending a little bit more money and investing on all electric cars instead of the regular combustible cars that we know of. And we should be also sharing the word with our people so that we can do so we can give public relevance to this situation. With these simple efforts, we could change the future of our environment's health. We could reduce the production of CO2 globally, which will impact in the healing of the ozone. Also, we could put pressure on manufacturers for creating more all-electric cars instead of combustible cars, and then we can abandon that area of the transportation sector. With all these, we could fight global warming and contamination at the same time. And I want to use this time to represent environment and ask you for help on the name of it. Now that we have talked about the main problems of producing combustible cars, its effects on our environment and the possible solution, I would like to ask you to act on this matter, as we should stop the production of combustible cars, combustible fossil fueled cars, and start focusing on the emerging EV solutions. In conclusion, we are more powerful than we know, that we think we are. And together we could do big things and big changes in the transportation sector to help our environment heal, and by doing small steps such as considering probably switching to an all-electric vehicle.